before the SATs being taken. Where it's quiet, sitting in the room.
Unless you go to the SAT and leave your calculator at home.
You left your calculator?
I sure did. I took it twice. The first time I left my calculator, and the second time I fell asleep in the middle of the test. I just gave up after that point. It obviously wasn't gonna get no better. I sure did.
They
I
told me
had
to
no
wash my
calculator.
hands. I had notes.
Wash your hands.
I had notes. You know, I'm gonna,
No, the SAT.
but just, you know, reminders.
Right.
I sure could have used some reminders. I feel slap asleep.
I was so
that night.
sweaty when I got in there,
But you
I
don't
couldn't
have to
read
pay
nothing.
Okay.
It's the first time we've all been here early.
I know. That's right. And it's hot in here, not cold. I think it kind of on my scarf. That's all right. Just in case. What thing I got? Maybe right. I got two.
You're doing it fair.
Over there.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome tonight to the regular scheduled meeting of the City of Griffin Board of Commissioners, June 9th, 2020. We're going to open up with Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Rodney McCord, and invocation followed with Trim and Tinsley III. If you'll please rise.
Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we are here today to ask for your blessings and guidance in the performance of our duties as elected officials. We pray for strength, love, knowledge, and understanding. Help us to recognize and solve the problems that are presented. Make our solutions fair and just to the best interests of everyone. Help us to overcome our shortcomings and keep us united as a team to work for the betterment of the city and its people. We pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you, gentlemen. First item is to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Mr. Brock with a motion.
Second.
Mr. Tinsley with a second. All in favor, signal by raising your hand. 7-0. Special order of business. We received comments regarding the proposed budget for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30, 2021. City Manager Kenny Smith will address.
Yes, sir. The budget has been duly presented. Copies have been on file in our office for review by the public for several weeks now. We had a public hearing in our last meeting. This is our second public hearing, and the budget will be ready for adoption following any comments tonight.
Are there any questions of Mr. Smith at this time? And my understanding, this is the public hearing section of the meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this,
Second public hearing.
This is the second public hearing.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
so at this time, this is the public hearing. Have we had any comments that were sent in to
No,
the city?
no comments have come in through the webpage or any online meeting.
At this time, is there anybody in the public who'd like to come before the board and ask questions or bring any point of order of the proposed 2021 budget? Thank you. Item 2, consider resolution adopting the annual fiscal year 2020-2021 operating budget, appropriating expenditures and projected revenues for specific purposes, functions, and activities by fund for the budget period and the capital improvements program. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is that Mr. Tinsley?
Yes, the third.
Mr. Tinsley? Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Murray with a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, signal by raising your hand. 7-0. And at this time, I just want to tell staff, thank you for your hard work and dedication, and department directors and everybody. Thank you. Good job. Under presentations and delegations, consider a proclamation declaring Black Lives Matter and urging all citizens to use this moment to accelerate our nation's long journey towards justice and a more perfect union. So at this time, Ms. Flowers is going to join me up front.
Yes, with our podium. Where's the podium? You go first.
You need public.
It's supposed to be on, yes, sir.
A proclamation from the City of Griffin, Black Lives Matter. Whereas the City of Griffin is asking Americans to dismantle white supremacy and grapple with the sins of our past as nationwide protests against racial injustice continue. And whereas on Sunday, May 31st, residents in the City of Griffin participated in a peaceful protest to bring awareness of Black Lives Matter. And whereas the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, at the hands of a white police officer is a result of an inhumane police brutality that is perpetuated by a culture of white supremacy. And whereas what happened to George Floyd was not the result of a bad apple, it was a predictable consequence of a racist and prejudiced system and culture that's treated black bodies as the enemy from the beginning. And whereas several municipalities across America have condemned racism and injustice, and whereas there are historical roots of discrimination in the United States in calling out systematic racism while advocating specific policies to prevent further police abuses and redress racial inequity is important. And whereas slavery, Jim Crow, and segregation were systems of legalized and monetized white supremacy for which generations of black and brown people paid an immeasurable price. That cost must be acknowledged, and the privilege that accrued to some of the expense of others must be reckoned with and redressed. And whereas the City of Griffin supports the Black Lives Matter movement because all lives matter in the City of Griffin, and systematic racism and social injustice have to be eradicated. And whereas the City of Griffin supports the Black Lives Matter movement because whereas the City of Griffin has critical role to play in creating an equitable society which is intolerant of intolerance. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Griffin Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim that Black Lives Matter in the City of Griffin, Georgia, and urge all citizens to use this moment to accelerate our nation's long journey towards justice and a more perfect union. Signed, Douglas S. Holberg, Mayor, Kenny L. Smith, City Manager.
Okay, so the reason that I wanted to accept the proclamation down here, where I typically expected the podium to be, is so that I could address the board both as your peer and also just as a citizen of this community. I first want to thank the board for approving this proclamation. I'm very grateful for the experiences that we do have in this community, and that to date we have been able to have peaceful protests, that there hasn't been any rioting, looting, and that largely our community is still intact. But I did want to note some things about the proclamation and what it means for me personally, and also what it means, I think, for some of the people in my district. And I just wanted to address some of the concerns about the proclamation because rumor mill, and that can be detrimental to the progress that I want to see come forward from the proclamation. So first and foremost, this proclamation is a result of discussion between myself, Commissioner Ward, and Commissioner McCord in light of everything that's going on in this country. Our country is literally on fire. You can turn the news on any day and see that. And we want to prevent our community from being on fire. Our hope is that we're able to enact change that gets us in front of the curve so that we don't find ourselves in that predicament. We've already been on the news before. I feel like the news trucks know how to get to Griffin without any issue. They don't need a GPS any day of the week for a number of things. But I would prefer that we not find ourselves on the news in the near future because of something that we could have prevented. And a lot of the things that have happened in this country were very much preventable. So in the discussion between the three of us, and we're kind of talking about what the experience is to be a black elected official in this community. And amongst us, we've talked about it before, it's a very different experience, and that's just the reality of it. And we want to acknowledge that both for us, again, as commissioners, but also as a citizen. I think I said, I don't know, I've had so many discussions with city staff and other commissioners. Being black is a very different experience than being white in Griffin. And I think it is a thing that's known, but it's not always a thing that's acknowledged. And so until we begin to acknowledge those things and have those uncomfortable conversations, it will be status quo. And so, again, going back to the proclamation and the language, if anyone has been on social media and you feel like this is the language that you saw from Ben and Jerry, you are absolutely correct. Ben and Jerry of ice cream fame put this statement out on their social media platform, and it struck a chord because it speaks to everything that is wrong with the systems that are in place now. It's so I say that to say we agreed on the language, but this isn't language that the three of us wrote. I thought it was really fitting, so I don't want to offend anybody because Ben and Jerry's only like 69, almost 70, but I'm like, it's two old white men. And so they totally understand what's happening in this country. They get it. They have language that's accurate, it's pointed, it's direct. And it doesn't call one person or try to hold one person accountable. It's attempting to hold the system accountable. And the problem is systemic and it's system-wide. So, again, I know there were some questions about where the language came from and who it originated and if it was authentic. It's Ben and Jerry's, but we liked it. The other part of it that I wanted to point out, and this is a personal issue that I had, and I hope that there is some resolution amongst the board, is when this language was presented, there was not a lot of discussion amongst the board about how it happened. And for me, that feels like it mimics the process of why racism continues to exist, because it is a very, very uncomfortable conversation. And quite often, you come into the conversation scared that you'll say the wrong thing, or you think you've said the right thing, but because racism is very emotional on both sides of the table, it's so easy to come into it with fear and confusion about how to participate. But until somebody says something, nothing will get said at all. And so I am a little disheartened because, as Rodney likes to say, we sit around and kumbaya, everything is great. But when we're faced with probably one of the most contentious experiences that we've had, we didn't even have a discussion about what it meant for this document to come before the board. So it does kind of leave me in a personal place of how have we been making policy for the entire community that reflects the needs and wishes of the entire community if we can't have this uncomfortable conversation about what our community actually is. I went a little nerd on y'all. The U.S. population is 12% black. Griffin is 55.5%. There's no reason that we're not having these difficult discussions because more than half of our city is a minority population. So it is my personal hope, as I said, going forward, that we somehow find a way to bridge the gap amongst ourselves and have those conversations that nobody wants to have. I'm an open door. I offered it to anybody who wanted to take. I'm certainly not a race expert, but if anyone knows my family history, black mom, white dad, I've literally been having the race conversation since the beginning. I think my mom said they tried to arrest her in the hospital because they were like, you too black to be taking that white baby out of here. So very early from the beginning, that has been my experience in this world of having to explain and navigate the white world and the black world. So I'm certainly open to any frank and honest conversation that we need to have. The questions that people say like, oh, don't ask that, you'll get judged, they'll be mad at you. I'll listen, I'll try to answer them, whatever I can to further the conversation. Okay, continuing on, the other thing that I wanted to point out, I know it's a lot, I should have told y'all to bring snacks, but I feel like these things need to be said. That, let me see, I got my notes, but I got thrown off because there's no podium. That proclamations are used to declare something, so this is not something abnormal from the things that we normally do as city business. We have Arbor Day and Earth Day, and we know Black History Month, and so, yes, we have finally, for me, it is a finally noted and proclaimed that Black Lives Matter. This whole experience for me has been a little confusing because most black people have known that these racial inequalities existed for a very long time. So it's a little befuddling to now have people saying like, oh my God, I didn't know this was going on. Because I'm like, how did you not know that it was going on? It's all over everything. So where I am grateful that this document is now in place and we have made this stand as a board and for our community, it is never too late to correct a wrong, but I certainly hope that we can acknowledge that this is probably something that should have happened before now. And I say that to say, again, you can't change what has happened, but we can certainly go into the future with a mindset of this. We are not just here because of George Floyd. His name is in our document twice, and he certainly is kind of at the forefront of all the unrest and protest in our country because it is the latest incident. But I don't want us to overlook the fact that it's almost weekly that you can turn the news on and see where someone's life has been violated or someone's life has been taken because of police brutality or other inhumane policies. So in the context of this proclamation, it very much looks like it's kind of a singular, this person died, so we want to acknowledge this. But there's the Breonna Taylors of the world and the Tatiana Jeffersons who literally were in their homes asleep at night and lost their lives because they were at home. There's nothing criminal about being at home. This is Georgia. Again, we've been on CNN because in Brunswick we have Ahmaud Arbery who was running and was hunted down. It goes beyond that. There's Philando Castile, who from St. Paul, and a police officer said he looked like a robbery suspect because he had a wide-set nose. He was killed in his car with his girlfriend and her 4-year-old daughter in the back seat. He told the law enforcement officer that he had a registered weapon in his car. That made the law enforcement officer uncomfortable, and shortly thereafter he found himself with 5 bullets in his body. So this proclamation, while we acknowledge where we stand now, is by no way to not acknowledge the historical context. Martin Luther King also was assassinated. It goes back further. There's Emmett Till. There's all of these historical cases that show what we're talking about when we say systemic. So I want us to always keep that in mind. The other thing that I did want to address going forward is there was some discussion about whether or not this was some type of retaliation or if there was a desire to defund the police. That's not a conversation that I've participated in. It's not a conversation that I'm aware has happened. I personally don't want to defund the police because I am a tax-paying citizen of this city, and when I call 911, I expect them to come to my house rather quickly. So that's not a conversation that I've had, and I don't want that to be dialogue that's attached to this. I don't want there to be a corrupt sense that we've put this document forth to incite, to aggravate, to agitate, to do anything that would take away from what the intention is, which is, I think we hope to see going forward that this stands as an agreement that change is needed in our community. Whether it's policy change, whether it's discussion that addresses the underlying attitudes and kind of inherent things that happen in our community. That is why we have this document. And finally, I kind of want to touch one of the things that I said because I think this is so important about the race discussion. Commissioner Mayor Holberg and I had a very lengthy conversation this weekend. I would say that it was productive, but it lasted a very long time. In that conversation, I asked him, I said, you've got children, you were there for the birth of your children. I'm sure you tried to help your wife through that process, but can you tell me what childbirth feels like? I don't have kids. I want to know. I need somebody to help me prepare for it. So I say, can you tell me? And he says, no, I don't actually know what it feels like. And I'm like, and that's exactly what I'm trying to say. I think a lot of times in this community when we say you can't understand what it's like to be black, that makes a lot of people, it makes them cringe and it makes them upset because there's some implicit narrative that's attached to it that by saying you don't understand there's a deficiency or that there's something wrong, when in reality, you can't understand what you just can't know. And we need to acknowledge that there's a difference in access to a group and membership to a group. And I think if we can go forward remembering that having access does not equate membership, it will give us a bit more tolerance and understanding for people who do actually have membership in marginalized groups. So I think I covered everything. If I didn't, it is what it is. I could have put a PowerPoint presentation together for y'all, and we literally could have been here for 3 hours, because there's no way to summarize what the historical Black experience has been in this country, in this city, in this community. Racism is pervasive and it's prevalent. It's not just overt and blatant, it's also the unspoken and the unconscious and the things that you don't even know that you're doing that happen. It's not, I don't want to give the impression that racism is isolated to white people. It's not. Racism runs the gamut, and it is a thing that happens. The reason that I bring up that it happens to everyone is because it can be addressed. There's no reason for us to try to assign it to one group of people and not take responsibility for the fact that it exists in our communities in a multitude of fashions. So again, thank you for the support for the proclamation today. Thank you, Ben and Jerry, for giving us the language that so eloquently captured what we felt like was an accurate experience that's going on right now. And certainly thank you to the community who have rallied together and preserved the sanctity of our community, as well as making sure that they're getting that message across that now is the time that we want to make sure that we're acknowledging that Black Lives Matters. And I will hope that the community holds us all accountable and doesn't allow us to say, well, the protests are over, the buildings are no longer on fire, it's status quo. I hope that they show up in 6 months and ask us what we did about it. That's it.
Commissioner Flowers, thank you for your courage and wisdom, and look forward to working. And my hope is that we all come together for the greater good of Griffin and Spalding County. Thank you. Item 4 is to recognize Carol Rainwater, Code Enforcement Officer, as the May 2020 Strongest Link Award recipient. And Planning Development Director Chad Jacobs will address before we watch a video.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening,
It's my pleasure to announce that Ms. Carol Rainwater was voted as the Strongest Link for May. This is a very well-deserved honor. She's worked extremely hard over the last month or two. It's been a big help to me, being somebody new coming in to the scene here, and I'm also very proud and honored that she was nominated by a fellow coworker. That makes me very proud. So fortunately, she's not here this evening to accept the award in person, but as you indicated, there is a video acceptance of her that was shot previously, and so with that.
It's supposed to be one.
That's been challenging in itself, but to be the sole code enforcement officer was assembled. So since the beginning of April, Carol Rainwater has been our sole code enforcement officer for the entire city. So, especially during a challenging time of COVID-19, that's been challenging in itself, but to be the sole code enforcement officer was even more challenging. While a lot of us were working rotating shifts, Carol was able to be here every day. Carol has a very unique demeanor. She's always calm, cool, and collected. So whenever she does face a challenge, she is our City Hall's complaint department, where she gets complaints from fellow co-workers, concerned citizens, administration, and Board of Commissioners. So every time that she receives a complaint and she addresses it in the field or whether it's in the office, she always just has this calm, cool, collected approach to it and gets the job done. And around this time of year, normally our code enforcement officers will get with union tax and license and go over and update our system and go over the commercial businesses that are operating without a business license or occupational tax certificate. So when I sat down with Carol in May, we discussed an action plan, a positive action plan, and how we can update our records. And on top of her heavy workload, she was more than willing to help me. So that's why I believe Carol is the strongest link in the chain for May 2020.
So, as a new employee of City of Griffin and a new director with City of Griffin of Planning and Development, I'm very, very proud, very, very happy that Carol has been awarded the strongest link for May. Coming in new to the scene, Carol's been extremely helpful in assisting with me to help learn everything about the city as it relates to code enforcement. Carol has been a huge help in getting out there and just getting the job done. And kind of to reiterate what Karen said, I've never heard her once say no or no, I can't get to that. She's always like, yes, sir, let me get out there and kind of help you out and see what we can get done. So I'm very, very happy that Carol has received this honor. And also, too, I'm very happy that Karen nominated Carol for this. So it's very indicative of a strong team environment in planning and development, and that makes me very proud.
I started with the City of Griffin in September of 2000, so I'm going into my 20th year here with the city. Code enforcement was the job they placed me in once the meter reader division was dissolved. So I didn't choose it, it chose me. At first it was very nerve-wracking, you know, thinking that everybody's critiquing your work. But as the years went on and I started understanding what code enforcement was all about and what it involved, it became a very personal satisfaction to me that I could drive through the city and I could look at what I do come to life. I am extremely humbled to receive this strongest link in the chain. I feel like there's so many employees out there that I see every day working in the heat, in the cold, people risking their lives, that to accept it, I feel like I need to accept it on behalf of everybody. I couldn't do my job without other departments. Solid waste, public works, water and wastewater, the police department. So to me, this is extremely humbling.
We have all witnessed Carol Rainwater's commitment to this community, and she makes a difference every day. And we're proud of your department, Chad, and for what y'all do to make Griffin a better place. Thank y'all. This time we'll review financial reports for April 2020. Chief Financial Officer Marcus Schwab will address. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start off with cash reports. Actually, do you have any questions on any of the financial statements?
Good.
No questions?
Good.
All good? Okay.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcus.
Citizens' comment. At this time, the mayor opens the floor for comments from the audience. Comments should relate to a specific agenda item not listed on the agenda for a public hearing or to a concern within the jurisdiction of the city commission of the city. Commission meetings serve the purpose of conducting city business and are not a forum for the unlimited expression of opinion. The mayor reserves the right to limit comments to matters germane to city business and may refer speakers to the city manager or other staff for resolution. With that being said, is there anybody on my left side that would like to come before the Board of Commissioners at this time? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Sharon Royal King. I live at 605 Forest Avenue. I am here today to speak on the idea behind the title of the proclamation, Black Lives Matter. The proclamation is not for the movement, but for the idea that Black humans matter. Black lives are our teachers, our healthcare workers, our police officers, our first responders, our commissioners, our business owners, our reverends, our charity founders and leaders. Black lives are our lives. The reason why this proclamation is so important is that it is the first time in our local history that our Board of Commissioners are willing to recognize Black lives in this community matter to this community. Reverend Derek Terry said it best in his 2019 MLK celebration speech entitled, 400 Years of Slavery, It Stops With Us. It stops with us as a declarative statement that includes not just Black people, but all people, everyone, all Americans. We have to stop treating race and social justice like a gift to minority populations. When we do the right thing for one group, we all benefit. You see, the race problem in our country is not just a black or a brown problem. It is an American problem. It stains all of us. It messes us all up. Dr. King wrote in a letter from Birmingham jail, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. This umbrella of hostility towards each other can no longer be over our heads. It stops here, it stops now, it stops with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Is there anybody else on my left side that would like to come before the board? Is there anybody on the right side that would like to come before the board? Yes, ma'am, please come forward. And please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Keishla Swasopadia. I can spell that if you need me to.
That'd be great.
It's Keishla. Last name Suazo hyphen Padilla. 167 Kathy Lane.
167 Catherine?
Kathy.
Kathy, okay, 167. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes.
ma'am.
So I have a comment, more so a question on how do we keep the discussions going with like the Black Lives Matters when how it can help with policy change, like what we were listening earlier, and how we can like better address specific issues within like our system, starting with like Spalding County. I didn't even know that this existed, and I've lived here since I was like 8 years old. So I was like, wow. So having some sort of way to communicate to the public, like that we are willing to have ongoing discussions. Like I would attend like meetings or luncheons or something just to keep the conversations going. I'm a mental health provider in this community. It's like I'm super passionate about like giving back to my community. I see things systemically with like the school systems and how I'm literally like the only bilingual Spanish-speaking, English-speaking therapist that's available in Spalding County. So I just want to make sure that like our needs are being met, and I know that it's like an ongoing issue. It's not going to be overnight, but like how can we like start getting the ball rolling with addressing these issues?
I know groups are already meeting. Ministerial Alliance met last night, but it's us bringing the dialogue and bringing concerned citizens together and being observant and willing to step up and basically if we see something, say something about it and stop it as soon as possible. But I think the dialogue has begun.
Yeah.
And Mr. Gordon.
I would add to it, and I'm glad, and you don't know what you stepped into by coming up volunteering like that. But every year, at the beginning of the year, the 7 of us, we look over this community and we are begging people to come out to be a part of different boards and authorities, and looking for people who are willing to serve and looking for diversity for these boards. We have a book with a list of all of the boards and authorities and their openings that come open each year. And we welcome you or anyone else that's out here to please become a part of your government, get involved. And that is the way that we get these conversations started, by adding people who are new to this. Because many of us up here have been here for a long time. And to get people with fresh ideas that are willing to serve, that had we known, we're looking for a member right now for our for one of our zoning. We need people. So to hear you come up and say that, and I'm going to steal your thunder for a minute.
Go for it.
When I was going to say this to the end, but it's not a more perfect time than right now. This is how I got into politics. In 1992, I witnessed the Rodney King incident. And I was a college student at Morehouse College, the finest predominant black institution in the nation. And at that time, I called my dad and I told him, I said, hey, these kids up here, and we're about to riot. And we're going to go out here and we're mad because of what happened to Rodney King. My dad told me, bring your, I can't say it in here, home. So I got in the car and I came home, and I was so mad, and I was telling him. And I wrote an article, wrote a letter to the Griffin Daily newspapers in 1992. And I was so mad. I was so mad, I did what you're doing. I was so mad, I got involved. I was and the guy sitting behind you right there will tell you, I was a lifeguard at the pool, working at the city pool as a lifeguard in 1992. In 1993, I became an elected official. At the age of 23, I decided to put my name in the hat, to put my frustrations with the system and how things were going, that I was not going to sit on the sideline and talk about what needed to be done and what was happening in my community, in my country, and in the world. And here, that was what, 1993, and now it's 2020. And I'm still doing the same thing because there is a need for people. I had to give up my 20s, some of the wild things that I wanted to do, and my cousin Malcolm wouldn't let me do, but some wild things I wanted to do, I had to give them up to become an adult and understand that this is what's important for the community that I live in, is to be a player, to be a part of it. And had I known I could have just joined a board or an authority, maybe I would have done that instead of running for office. But instead, I made that choice, and I'm so glad that I did. It's not always easy. Getting on these boards, you'll understand that you won't be able to make all the changes that you want to make, but you'll understand how it works. And you'll understand what it takes to make your community a better place. So I know you only had a few minutes, and I stole your time, but I just wanted to point out that this is what we're talking about. That the proclamation, that's what we're talking about. Inviting people to the table. Nobody on this board, and I don't even have to take a poll, is anti-police. We're not for defunding the police department. We applaud our officers. Because of law enforcement, there was an incident that happened in Griffin some years ago to a gentleman by the name of Tim Coggins. Had it not been for law enforcement, that situation would never have been settled. Justice would not, that family would not have closure today. And that wasn't about race, because it was the head of that law enforcement agency is a white man. So whenever I see this, whenever I get people who are the least bit interested in this process that we are all a part of, your government, you are the government. And to say that you want to participate in it means so much to the 7 of us and the staff, because that's what we're looking for. So we applaud you as much as we applaud anyone else that comes forward. So thank you so much for taking the time. We're going to get that book to you and have you look through it and find something that may fit your eye. And these conversations, as the mayor said, we have these conversations that are started in our community. And it's not just black people talking about it. It's not just white people talking about it. It's everybody coming together to understand that there is a problem that we need to address. And it's not going to always be easy. It's not going to always be a situation where you're going to leave there feeling good, and there's going to be some hurt feelings sometimes. But at the end of the day, when people understand that we're in this planet together, it's one race, the human race. And we start to look at people as humans, and we treat other people as humans the way we want to be treated, we will all be so much better off. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Thank you for coming.
We also have Citizens Government Academy every fall, as well as Citizens Police Academy and Fire Academy, usually in the winter and spring. So they're training opportunities to learn about government as well. So we'd love to get you plugged in and get involved.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
She didn't know
Sorry
she was
about
up for all
that.
that.
You'll leave your business card up there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there anybody else in the audience like to come before the board to speak tonight? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Hi, Miss Kim. My fuzzy eyeballs.
Ms. Holbert. Mayor Holbert.
Thank you.
Board. Kim Williams, I'm at 502 South 6th Street. I'm really encouraged to hear everybody talk about all the boards and associations attached to the city. My biggest concern is that those boards are nearly impossible to serve on if you work. The majority of them meet during work hours, and I would love to sit on a board, but I can't take 2 hours off from work to come to a meeting. I have to be at work. I would love to see something put in place that would require those boards to meet after the workday, in the 5:30 or later hour. That would open up the possibilities for everybody who would wish to serve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience like to come before the board? Yes, Ms. Jewell.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me and understand what I'm saying. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'm Jewel Walker Harps. I live at 103 McElthel Drive, Griffin, Georgia.
Michael.
Thank you. Is that better?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm speaking on behalf of the Griffin branch NAACP. I had a speech, but I sat there and I listened to Rodney because I was going to talk about Tim Coggins for a minute. And I listened to the proclamation, and I applaud you for that. And I went back, my mind went back to all of the concerns that come across my desk daily. And then my mind went back to Gary Reed, Jimmy Holland, Blake Barlow, and many others who walked this same road for so long. And I'm still walking. I'm still walking. The knees are still in my neck. And I'm tired. Nothing has changed. And it really, by this time, I'm tired enough to say that it really doesn't matter what you say you're going to do, because I don't believe it. So much time has passed. So many knees have been in our necks. We're tired. It doesn't matter if you carry a sign or if you march, if you sing the freedom songs. That doesn't resonate when I go home and I have all of these calls about people who are living in substandard conditions. It doesn't matter. I'm tired. And I grieve. I grieve when you put in my school, where my child goes, a person who has been out of the profession for 10 or more years, and say that that's good enough. That's the best person for this job. I'm tired. It really doesn't matter. I'm tired. I feel your need. When you talk about building top-notch facilities and placing them in an area that will exclude me and persons who look like me. I'm tired. I can't breathe. It doesn't matter what you say tonight. When you place little boys on the front page of a newspaper who are so terribly, inappropriately dressed, and you're titled, they're dressed for success. Your knee is in my neck, and I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired when you talk about what you're going to do, yet behind the doors. When it's time to propose policies and laws and any kind of issue that requires you to stand up and take a stand and speak for right. Your knee is in my back. Your knee is in my neck. And I'm tired. I'm tired. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Are we going to talk some more? Are we going to hide when the issues come up? When you're with your friends, are you going to stand up and say, that's wrong? Or are you going to keep your knee in my neck and I can't breathe anymore? A change has to come. But it has to come in the hearts and minds of people. The real you keeps coming out. And I'm tired. I'm tired of listening. I'm tired of being an underdog. I'm tired of every time I come down here, I don't see anybody who looks like me in administrative positions. They come and they go. Why is that? Are you keeping your knee in their neck? And they can't breathe? I'm tired. And I can go on and on and on. Think about it. If when you sit behind that desk, you're not willing to use your pen and your mouth to represent me in a way that tells me and shows me that you believe in equality and justice for all, you have nothing else to say, because I'm tired. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jewell. Is there anybody else that'd like to come forward and make a statement at this time? Thank you all for being here tonight. Moving into public hearings, we're going to receive comments regarding a request to rezone the property located at 1032 West Solomon Street, consisting of a .2 plus or minus acres from medium density residential to neighborhood business district. Chad Jacobs will address. Welcome back, sir.
Sir. As indicated, this is a rezoning request of .2 acres to go from MDR, medium density residential, to in BD, neighborhood business district. The request is compliant with the comprehensive plan and the associated future land use map. That document designates this subject property as a commercial designation, so this is compliant with that document. The property has also historically been utilized commercially as a legal nonconforming use, or in other words, grandfathered, with occupation tax records indicating businesses on the property dating back to at least 2001 being commercial use. Recently, the occupation tax certificate lapsed for a period which exceeded 12 months, negating the legal nonconforming status, thus the need for this process that we're going through currently to rezone. Staff recommends conditional approval of the request with the following conditions. That the use and the development of this property shall conform to the regulations of NBD, Neighborhood Business District, except as otherwise stated below. Shall be used as a restaurant, eating establishment only. Shall have adequate paved surface parking to accommodate use for a restaurant. Maximum occupancy based on formulas contained in the statewide minimum building code, or ICC code. Fire and life safety compliance based on inspection. Register with the City of Griffin occupational tax permit. And finally, the property has to meet landscaping requirements for a commercial district. On June 1st, at their meeting, the Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval along with the staff conditions. However, with one exception, they left out Condition C, which is in reference to the paved parking. However, we would like to note that the paved parking condition is a UDC requirement that is found in Section 801. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the commissioners for Mr. Jacobs at this time?
I had a question from a citizen regarding this earlier of why was it zoned, why is a business zoned residential anyway?
Probably predated current zoning would be my guess. That's not an uncommon issue, as zoning ordinances update through time. Oftentimes the uses of property that are historically out in a neighborhood may predate the code. So Hence, that's why you get your grandfathering that comes into play. So you can't go back and take away a use once an ordinance is updated. That is allowed to continue, hence the term legal nonconforming. But if at any point in time that business lapses, and usually most of your nonconforming language is going to reference a 12-month rule, then that underlying zoning is going to take effect.
So when we used it as a business before that zoning lapsed and it turned back to residential?
If it lapsed for
If it lapsed, okay.
longer than 12 months, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does the board have any other questions before we go to the public?
I have a question about item C.
Yes, sir.
That business has been open for a while.
Yes, sir.
What's their intent on the parking lot, on paving the surface?
What is theirs?
What is the intent of the person wanting to get this rezoned? What's their intent as far as getting the parking lot paved?
It's my understanding that's a point of contention. However, it is, like I said, mentioned, it's a portion of the UDC under 801. Specifically, there is a reference there that any issuance of building permits prior to issuance of those permits, it must comply with the parking requirements.
Okay, but they're already operating.
Understand that?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I mean, when it was Leon's, and everybody here is eating at Leon's, you know, when he was open, he's got parking in the back, which is gravel.
Correct.
But I just had a question about, is this conditional about a paved parking lot?
Like I said,
all the
the
other
condition is just a reiteration of the UDC requirement, so as just to make sure that we're all clear that that's still
Okay.
in effect. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Tinsley, we spoke with the business owner upon his opening this business, and the Leon's, as Chad mentioned, had closed, so the legal non-conforming due to the 12 months had lapsed. So we spoke to the owner of this business when he opened and explained that requirement, and also told him that we would give him ample time to go through the zoning process to make sure it was zoned properly, and then give him a reasonable amount of time. It's not anything he's got to do tomorrow or next week. That we would give him, as a new business owner, a reasonable amount of time to bring it into.
I understand that. What do we define as reasonable? I mean, is it going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years? What's reasonable?
Up to the board, I would say 6 months would be reasonable.
Okay.
Well, we could do like we did some of the other businesses. We can change an ordinance about 3 or 4 times to fit.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
This is
Now,
a
Ray,
pub-
I talked to the business owner as late as last week, and he understands the need for consistency because we have
Sure. Continuity.
made other businesses meet this requirement. He understood it.
So they agree to the paved parking that's in,
Well, the business owner is not the property owner. You have a property owner and then you have a business owner. So
okay.
I've only spoken to the business owner. I haven't spoken to the property.
You do? Hand him the mic. so he
This is
can
a
get it.
public hearing at this time.
No. Keep your seat, keep your seat.
Name and address for the record, Mr. Castile.
David Castile, 705 Woodland Drive, and Vice Chairman of the Zoning and Planning Board. I might first mention that the Planning and Zoning Board debated this at some length, and our unanimous vote was to ask for the paving to be deleted for this. This is a multifaceted decision, not the least of which is it seems like from the beginning, the failure to communicate makes Cool Hand Luke pale by comparison. It's gone on for 2 or 3 years now. There was even a truck wreck involved in it, running into the building, and the dispute over that. All of it took a long, long time. These folks were allowed to spend multi-thousands of dollars remodeling a building, and as I understand it, and as I have been told, that most of this money was spent before they were ever mentioned to them that they did not have a business license, a zoning for their business license, because they had omitted buying one. I've been on that board there for so long, I'm not even sure how long I've been on it now. I don't know how many times we have seen people lose grandfather rights because they did not know that they had to maintain that business license, even though the business was not open for business. I've got one in the same situation, but I knew better than to let it go, even though I don't do the business over anymore. But there's been everything under the sun, and here we are, the federal government is spending literally trillions of dollars trying to keep businesses afloat through this pandemic and the economic recession that it's brought on. And here we are down here trying to put our knee on this man's neck. And that's, I'm not going to go any further, but that's the way I feel about it.
Thank you, Mr. Castile. Is there anybody else in the audience like to come before the board to discuss this matter? And it's my understanding that whether it was already zoned or not, our UDC code states clearly that you're supposed to have paid parking. That's correct. Okay. Any other question?
Also keep in mind, one of the misconceptions that Mr. Castile pointed out is the city of Griffin does not require a business license. We don't have business license. We have occupational tax. And when you pay your occupational tax, there's no stipulations in any of the code about what is required. It's simply a tax. Business license are not contingent. We don't do business license which are contingent upon any qualifications. It's simply a tax based on your business and your number of employees.
And I'm glad you said that, because I was reading, I got one of the packets myself to read for myself, and it says you get a occupational tax commonly known as a business license. That's the language that's used on the very information that we give people when they go down to open a business. That's what it says. It says occupational tax, and it's parentheses, and it says commonly known as a business license. So to a person that's new to the game, to come in to open a business, I would think from reading that, a reasonable person would look at that and say, this is a business license. You know, if we need to take that language off because it's sending the wrong signal, the wrong message, that this is not what you're getting, but that's what it says.
And we can correct that. It's actually in lieu of a business license.
Okay.
Well, you don't have both.
Not necessarily in lieu. A business license is a regulatory license that somehow governs the operation of a business within your community. Often you pay a permit fee or a license fee when you get a business license. For example, an alcohol license. That's probably the best example. But that package store that gets the alcohol license also has to pay the occupation tax, which is a revenue-raising measure. In 1993, the Georgia Supreme Court invalidated the provision of all municipal charters in the state that allowed the imposition of what was then called business licenses, because nobody regulated. They simply charged an amount of money each year for that business because it was there. And this is a fallacy. The courts have tried to correct this several times, various opinions since '93, and have tried to point out that an occupation tax and a business license are two separate things.
The language that we have says.
Yeah, I think we pointed that out before.
Okay.
Are there any questions or comments? Thank you. Consent agenda, we have items 7 through 9. Do we have a motion to take them as one?
So moved.
Mr. Tinsley with a motion.
Second.
Mr. McCord with a second. Any discussion? All in favor of items 7 through 9, please raise your hand. 7-0. Moving into the regular agenda, consider minutes of the May 26, 2020 City Griffin Board of Commissioners workshop and regular meeting.
Yeah, break those up.
So we'll take the workshop first.
Y'all didn't call me and tell me about the workshop.
Oh, that's right.
I didn't know.
There we go. So I think 5 of us were here for the workshop. So do we have a motion?
We waited for you. I'm just kidding.
Do we have a motion for the workshop?
Motion. Second.
Mrs. Flowers with a motion, Mrs. Murray with a second. All in favor, signal by raising your hand. And then 5 with 2 abstentions.
Yeah.
Two abstentions.
With Mr. Tinsley and
I was with Mr. Tinsley.
Mr. McCord and Mr. Tinsley. And then we'll go to the regular meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes for the
Make a
regular?
motion that we approve the minutes.
Mr. McCord with a motion. that Ms. Murray?
Second.
Ms. Murray with the second. All in favor, signal by raising your hand. And then one abstention. Mr. Tinsley abstaining from the minutes. Going to item 11, consider a request to rezone the property located at 1032 West Solomon Street, consisting of .2 plus or minus acres from medium-density residential MDR to neighborhood business district. The pleasure of the board.
I make a motion to approve.
With the conditions?
Which condition?
With the conditions that are
With
listed?
with the conditions that the planning and zoning board put forward.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Ms. Murray? Ms. Murray with a second. Any discussion?
I have to ask, now, David, Mr. Castillo, you said that item C was not in your recommendation, is that correct?
Item C is the payment.
Yeah.
Staff's
So we
recommendation.
specifically asked that that be excluded
Okay,
from the conditions.
all right.
So the motion on the table is for
Staff.
approval without requirement for paving parking lot. That's the motion on the
Yeah.
table.
That's my motion.
Your motion is without the payment? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. So Ms. Ward with the motion, and who was the second? Ms. Murray with the second. All in favor of the rezoning with the conditions minus the item C of the paid parking, please raise your hand in favor. Those against, like sign. We have a 5-2 with Holberg and Tinsley voting against.
And the only reason I voted against is I was to make it clear, I think we need to have continuity. I'm not anti-business. I've heard enough of this. Anti-business, Griffin is anti-business. I had a friend who, a very close friend of mine, who opened a business down in Pike County because he couldn't get anybody from the city. I heard that from him. I'm not anti-business. I just believe we need to have continuity. If we require other business to have certain landscaping, certain lighting features, certain pavements, we have to have continuity. That's the way I feel. I'm sorry. I like Leon's. I like the seafood up there at the other place, but I hope I don't go in there. They don't throw something at me, but
You'll be okay.
I guess the dilemma comes with enforcing our uniform development code now, because it does require in the uniform development code, so kind of puts the staff somewhat at odds with your wishes in the unified development code.
That's true.
Item 12, consider resolution for the loan agreement and promissory note to borrow an amount not to exceed $3 million from the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and is administered by the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority for emergency power backup at the Steel Branch Regional Water Treatment Plant, and authorize the mayor to execute same for the Wastewater Department. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Ms. Murray with a motion.
Second.
Ms. Ward with a second, and we're also, for the record, receiving $750,000 from the state for this project. All in favor, please raise your hand. 7-0. Item 13, consider a task order from the Steel Branch Generator Design to Paragons Consulting Group in the amount of $238,000 for the Water and Wastewater Department. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Ms. Ward with a motion.
A second.
Mrs. Flowers with a second.
Miss Flowers.
Ms. Flowers? Thank you. All in favor, signal by raising your hand. 7-0. Item 14, consider a task order from the Traffic Signal Timing and Coordination for the City of Griffin's LCI project in the amount of $101,550 for the Public Works Department. Is there a motion to approve?
so moved.
Mr. Tinsley with a motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Flowers with a second. All in favor, please signal by raising your hand.
They're still here.
7-0. I got corrected over here. Item 15, consider a resolution to support the application for a tourism product development resource team grant to fund $10,000 of the cost of the wayfinding signing project. Economic Development Director Patrick Kay will address. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I want to make one correction. There was a typo on the resolution under the last paragraph there. It's be it further resolved. It should say for FY 2020 and not for 2016 on there. That was my fault on there.
Thank you.
This is to, I think roughly about 10 years ago, there was a plan to do a citywide wayfinding signage project. Part of it was done in terms of the gateways into the community, then the parking signs in downtown Griffin. This is to continue that project from before. We received $35,000 or a commitment from $35,000 from the Griffin Spalding Business Tourism Association, and are requesting the commissioner's approval to submit a grant to the state to receive $10,000 for the tourism product development grant resource team.
And we're also putting $7,000 of in-kind as well.
That is correct.
Into that as well. Thank you.
I have a question. Wait, did we already call for it?
We haven't had a motion yet.
Okay, I can ask my question as a motion.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Ms. Ward with a motion.
Second.
Mr. Tinsley with a second. We have a question for Ms. Flowers.
The signs, the images of the signs in the packet, these are just kind of like prototypes, like ideals of what they would be.
The signs that we're actually going to be installing are on page 13 and 14 of the document on there. There has been some modifications to that original plan on there. If you look on page 13 and 14, there are some sections on there that has on the left-hand side where it says Griffin written vertically. Originally, that was planned as a water-cut metal design there, and to save on cost on there, it's instead of being a water-cut design on there, it's actually just going to be a quarter-inch thick aluminum plate there, and it's going to be vinyl's going to be written on top of that. The yellow finial on top was a significant reduction in some of the cost on there because that was another water-cut design.
Hold on one second. Somebody tell me what, because there's like 8 documents on here.
Which document?
I'm looking through all of them. None of them have 13 pages. Somebody help.
We've got a resolution, grant, overview of application, Griffin.
Oh, wait.
signage.
I might have found it.
Which one is
It's the 4th one down.
it? Griffin signage
My
drawing.
Wi-Fi went out. You have yours up. I just want I think it's not the drawing package, might be the overview of application. That one had like 24 pages. No, that's 3 pages. Sorry, y'all. I just asked because there's one document in there that still says fairgrounds on it.
Yes. The only ones that we're doing, may I approach?
Yeah, come on, because I am there trying to do it.
You've got to practice social distance.
I know. I got my mask right now. Okay. All right, I'm good. Perfect.
Any other questions? We have a motion for Ms. Ward, a second by Mr. Tinsley. All in favor, please signal by raising your hand. 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Kay. Item 16, consider ratification of the administrative order declaring a portion of West Broadway Street a no parking area. Deputy City Manager Jesse O'Connor will address.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You should have in front of you a recommendation from our police chief in regards to the property at 501 West Broadway. Most of you probably know that as the old Thomaston Mills location. We've had some issues there recently where we have some trucks that come in and out of that facility since it is still active storage for Impact Office. And we have a property owner that is somewhat across the street from Thomaston Mills that is parking cars right at that entrance into the public right-of-way and onto the street. Because of that curve coming around Broadway, it is impossible to see, and so the trucks are having to go around into the opposite lane of traffic. And we've had a couple of accidents there. And so we are asking that that area be designated a no parking area. Our ordinance, which is under 90-112 and 90-81, I think, allow that to be done by administrative order. However, Mr. Smith, when he has done them in the past, has asked that the board ratify that administrative order so it's written on the minutes and has a proper notification to our citizens that that will be taking place. So we are asking that you ratify his administrative order. It will become effective on today's date if it is so approved, and our sign shop will make signs that say no parking and will paint that curb yellow in accordance with our ordinance as well. It can then also be cited under state law for no parking in that particular area.
I make a motion.
Ms.
Oh, you got it, okay.
Ms. Murray made a motion. Do we have a
Second.
second? Ms. Ward with a second. All in favor, signal by raising your hand.
Jessica, is that the only area throughout all of this that we are contemplating also no parking? Any other areas?
That's the only area we have looked at so far, that we just had a recent issue there, and so that was asked that the police chief do that. And upon that ordinance, that is how you have to go about that. It has to be a recommendation from the police chief based on some kind of complaint in regards to a traffic issue. So that's the way that that has to be organized. And that's the only one currently that has been addressed in that manner.
Okay, thank
The
you.
last one we did was on George Circle, which was in, I think, January or February of 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into item 17, consider purchase property located at 213, 219, and 231 North 12th Street.
Did we vote?
Vote, they already voted.
Voted 7-0. 7-0. You're good. Purchase property on Broad Street and then 612 and 624 Wright Street in the amount of $22,000 and amend the budget accordingly.
I make a motion.
Second.
Mr. McCord with a motion, Ms. Ward with a second. All in favor, signal by raising hand. 7-0.
Thank you very much.
18, consider appointing one voting delegate and one alternate to represent the city of Griffin at the 2020 MEAG Power Annual Election, which will be held on Tuesday, November 14, 2020 at 10:30 a.m. via an electronic process. Electric Director Jennifer Freeman will address. Happy
Good
day.
evening.
Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, it's that time of year where you all will appoint one of your peers to be a voting delegate at the MEAG for the annual election. That'll be held through an electronic process this year rather than at their annual meeting like it has been in the past. And traditionally, the alternate is the electric director.
I'd like to nominate Mayor Holberg and the alternate is Jennifer Freeman.
Second. Third.
We have a motion to close nominations.
Motion.
Ms. Flowers with a motion. Do we have a second?
Me, Holly.
Ms. Murray, Mrs. Murray. I've been corrected. I'm not the school teacher today.
Thank you very much.
Murray, all in favor, please signal by raising your hand. 7-0. All right, moving into item city manager report.
Okay. Archway Executive Committee meeting on June the 3rd, the Executive Board agreed to proceed with Archway facilitation of a community-wide strategic plan to be completed by the Carl Vinson Institute of Government. This will be funded by Archway at an estimated amount of about $35,000 with no cost to any of our partners. So we're excited about that, and work on that should get underway as soon as we get over our mask and social distancing, and we can all get together as a group and talk about the issues. The good news is the county reported that our April loss was 2.9% higher than last April. It came in countywide at over $835,000. We will see how May shakes out and see how that, if that continues, but that's a positive note for April at least. We are having fireworks July the 4th. Had some questions about that, but as you recall, we decided to move ahead. Us in Spalding County decided to move ahead with our fireworks show, so that will be on July the 4th. Same location as last year. We do ask that everybody be careful, stay in your cars, park in the big parking lots, not gather, maintain social distance, and be careful.
That's the old Spalding High School
Yes,
area.
sir. Yes, sir. In that area up there, Southern Crescent, College and Career Academy, old Walmart, that area. We are working on adding 2 additional what we call blank out signs. They're the warning signs for the railroad when the tracks are blocked. We are adding a couple of those on the North Hill Street side to warn everybody when the train is blocking the tracks if you're coming south from that direction. If you haven't signed up for the virtual GMA conference with Teresa, that conference is June the 29th through July the 2nd. And like most other conferences, it will be virtual. So be sure and sign up. You still have to register. If you want to take in any of those short classes. We don't have any official confirmation on cancellation of the MEAG conference. As you heard, the voting will be virtual, so we're anticipating that that conference will not be an in-person conference, but it has not been officially canceled. As soon as we hear something, we'll update you on that. The Lions Club, in conjunction with the city and the county, is distributing free boxes of fresh produce to the public as part of the USDA's Farmers to Families box food program. That will be this Friday at City Park from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So anybody can come by and get a box of fresh produce from the Lions Club in the city and the county. I want to again thank the Finance Department and the Department Directors for good work on the budget, and appreciate your support on that. I also want to congratulate Carol. I don't think everybody realizes we normally have 4 code enforcement officers. We've been down to 1, which is over the last few months. And she has put up with a lot from me and a lot of other people and kept smiling. And we hope soon to get back to our in-person recognitions. We're doing it video just to cut down on the number of people at our meetings in person, but we hope to get back to recognizing those employees in person real soon. Also, the reason we don't have a podium, we're trying to avoid hand touching and stuff getting out on the
We
podium.
wanted to mess with Cora, really. That was
Be
the
a
whole purpose.
little, I know it's not as comfortable, but it's a little more sanitary to do it that way. And I just want to say a special thank you to all of our employees. We've been through some very trying times over the last few months. Everybody from customer service to solid waste, not to mention our first responders as well. They've really been stressed out and have really stepped up to the plate and done tremendous work over the last few weeks. So we really appreciate the tenacity of our employees and the work that they've been able to do. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen? Mr. McCord?
Just one last thing, and I'm glad the chief is, I think he's still here. This part about this vandalizing our cemetery, that is not acceptable in this community. We had a peaceful protest about, a week ago Sunday. We had some people to come out in the community. They did it the right way. They got permission, talked to the chief, talked to the city manager and his staff. It went well. They were able to say what they needed to say, exercise their First Amendment rights, and we had no vandals, no damage to any property in our community. And then on last Friday, we had this unfortunate incident of someone going out vandalizing our cemetery. That is unacceptable, and I hope that the chief is able to find out who committed this crime and make sure something is did about it, because we don't want that in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got some leads. Awesome.
Ms. Murray?
What a tough night. It definitely is more learning experience for me because here again, we're just under, 2 years, Truman? So
No, we're over 2 years.
we're over 2 years. Time flies. But anyway, I feel like I had lots of calls and texts and emails just regarding District 3, and I had lots of questions because people publicly knew what was going on. They're concerned. Going back to what Rodney said, I had pictures they were circulating. We had concerned citizens. We had propaganda written out there, and you all know what it said. So some of the concerns that citizens reached out to me about, I had citizens in my district and then citizens citywide, and I told them in no way does the city of Griffin, we do not get involved with radical movements because that's not our job. We're not here to do that. We do not get involved with party politics. We do not get involved in movements that would divide We have to be neutral. We have to look at the greater good. We have to look out for all citizens. We cannot let movements and so forth. And I told them the biggest thing is I had citizens that are police officers. They live in my district. They were concerned what this would mean for them, because when they look on the news, and it's no secret, you look on the news and you see what all these groups are doing, it's kind of confusing if we're going to make statements and what our mission is. We just want to be sure that our citizens know in no way are we going to even approach defunding or anything that might take from our police department. And now I want to be very proactive that we know we do have a problem, and we know we have one nationally. We know we have one state. It involves police brutality. But we have to be really careful with losing the identity of our city. I learned this 2 years ago when we had a courtroom full of people, and I think, Cynthia, you were a mayor at the time, I believe? No. Okay. But I remember her message was, people are coming in from everywhere, but this is our town. You don't tell us what to do. We have to be very careful that this is our identity. Tonight, Cora got up and said, we are 55% this. This is our identity, okay? And so the police officers that called me, they are no one is not empathetic in this movement. No one. I have not met a single person. However, our police officers have asked me to work with you because this is the start of so many different objectives that need to be cleared up across the board. But number one, they want to remove the labels. And I think you all addressed that well tonight because they have been lumped and grouped. Okay, I do not stand for police brutality. Not one single soul in this room, I believe, would ever stand for that. And I am aware that there are injustices, not just to the black citizens who do live in my district, but community and citywide. And I do not stand for that, and I will take a stand for that. And we need to work as a group. I think our lady who's here asked, what do we do going forward? We can just talk, because we do just talk. And I think we have talked about what we're going to do as far as sitting down and looking at policies, but I want to look at what our options are with our police training. I think that seems to be the national norm, or the word being spread, but I also want to keep our identity, and we want to make sure that we have police options and we give them the best and give you all the best options so that this is taken care of here, because this is Griffin. I do not want to lose our identity. I am not joining movements or anything that will divide, oppress, or control any of the citizens of my district, my community, and my city, and that's the stand that I take. I am pro-police. I am pro-citizen. I am for honoring black lives. Honoring. I love our black citizens. I have citizens in my district. I love you all citywide. You are a part of me, and I am a part of you. There is no division. There is no group that can make me divide from you. You are my children's teacher. You are my children's doctor. And you are our associate pastor. And thank you for spiritually lifting me up. Okay, we are not 1960. We are 2020, Griffin, Georgia. We cannot look at what might go on in all of these other places and let that ruin our identity and the way we treat each other. And I don't think that's the message tonight, but I think that's what I need to hit home. Because I'm not joining any movement that might look for 1 minute that I do not support police lives and black lives and any of your lives. We are better than that, and I also want to let you all know that I stand for every police matter should always be treated individually. We do not need to make knee-jerk decisions. They will need to be investigated individually, because right now, look at the city of Atlanta. We do not want to do that. We do not ever need to let political pressure make decisions for here, our city, our government in Griffin, Georgia. And that's what I stand for. I love you all. I love our black community. I am very saddened by everything that's going on right now in our community. Everything from the way people are discussing things, everything from what's going on with the children and what I have to explain to them, everything from what they saw with the with the monuments and graves. That is unacceptable, and I will take a stand for you all. And I want us to not just return to normal. I don't think we want to return to normal. I think that we all need to take what we took away with us 2 years ago, because we are a progressive city, Griffin, Georgia. We are a diverse city. We are a thriving city, and we do not need to let anything that goes on nationally or across party politics or any movement whatsoever take that away from us and divide us farther. And that's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to end on that note. And thank you for coming. I'm sorry I went on.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Ms. Flowers?
So I think I may have touched this earlier. I just want to reiterate, this is a very confusing time for a lot of people in our community. And as I pointed out to you in our phone conversation, sometimes we need to listen more and talk less. And it would probably be wise if that is something that most of us heeded in this community, because if we had listened prior to now, we would probably not be in the position that we are in. And there is very much the adage that says God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And I think that what we should look forward to is learning and not attempting to tell people what their experiences have been, but being open to understanding what those experiences have been. And that will be best accomplished by listening and not talking. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Mr. Brock? Good.
Well, I was going to say, Mr. Jared, but you can answer that from the corner. So what I've got to say is, wow, what a great meeting, what a great audience of people, unity that we showed tonight to make us successful.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tinsley?
I'm not sure, but I think we're one of the first communities that I'm aware of, especially in this area, to declare Black Lives Matter as a proclamation. Is anybody aware of anybody in the community? No, I think we're the first one, and I'm very proud that we did that. To elaborate just a little bit on what Commissioner McCord said, my wife is buried at Oak Hill. I went out there Saturday afternoon after it became public knowledge of the vandalism to the markers out there. I met several people, and one lady, who I won't mention her name, but she said it was like divine intervention. About a dozen people showed up, and they had the proper chemicals, as I found out, to remove the graffiti from the monuments out there. And they did. One young man was an Eagle Scout, and there was a contractor. I plan to recognize these individuals at our next meeting. There was 3 of them that did most of the work. The city had already taken some action, but had not completed it, and these people completed it. They volunteered. They took care of all the graffiti out there. Don't know who did it. It doesn't make any difference. Hopefully Chief Yates will grab these guys. But in the following night, I think it was Saturday night, they did vandalism over McDonough to their monuments over there as well. History is history. It's not going to change. And these were Confederate monuments. There was one in the Stonewall Jackson Cemetery that was vandalized. There was one out at the Veterans Memorial Park that was vandalized. But they got all the graffiti off. It's all the monuments are back in pristine condition. I saw Griffin at its finest that afternoon. And I just leave it with this: good will always overcome evil. And we did. Thank you.
Ms. Ward?
I too like Truman and like Rodney, I'm not in favor of, or I don't agree with any kind of vandalism for anything, for any reason. And I'm going to say this, and I don't know how y'all going to take it, but black folks don't hang out in the cemetery. So I hope you find out who did it too. I think that might be what, and if it had been one cemetery we might have looked up in. We're not going to another county to be hanging around in a cemetery.
Well, there was one.
We don't even like to go to the cemetery when it's a funeral.
There was one grave that was vandalized. We never found that, but it was a Vietnam vet grave that was vandalized. I mean, why would you do that? You must be insane, I'm sorry, to do that. I'm sorry.
So whoever did that had to be wise enough to know that that's what it was. We ain't hanging out in no cemetery. And, when Cora, Rodney, and myself were sitting down talking, what we realized that we are 3 generations of African Americans in this city. And my family, before myself, there was a couple of more generations that's been here for a very long time. And I understand what you're saying about, y'all are saying about the vandalism. But what, I've been for the last couple of weeks, I've been in a really, really bad place. Because I've seen a lot of things, and I know a lot of things. And I have been a party to being personally involved or being identified with some of the racial injustices and what comes with being black in America. So I kind of like, I had said I was not going to say anything tonight because I didn't know what was going to come out of my mouth. But I prayed about it. And I understand about the statutes and all of the other stuff. But what comes to my mind, what's in my mind, is the knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That was video. That's how long it was video. And the expression on the police officer's face or the man's face, there was nothing of remorse. And the fact that there were 3 other police officers with guns, and 2 of them were on his body. And if anybody that can stand by and say, pretty much what tonight what we said is, how we don't want our city to be identified this way, or this to be identified that way. This is not something that has just started to happen. This has been systemic. And with research, this started over 400 years ago. So, like I said, I'm really in a bad place, and I kind of feel like Jewel. I'm tired. I feel like there's a lot of other things that come with systemic racism that in our community that we have not acknowledged. I feel like, and in my district, which is a predominantly black district, there's some things that does not change because of who we are in the district, because we are black in America, black in Griffin, black in the district. So it is my intent, and I hope none of the commissioners misunderstand this. And basically what I told you and what I said is, for 20 years I have been what I've tried to do, except for when I was identified as the angry black woman up here. What I have tried to do is be a team player and to do what was going to be best in the interest of the city. But it has come a time in my life, because I'm not getting any younger, that I have my sole focus is going to have to be on what is going to make it better for the people in my district and the black faces in my community, to bring them up to have equal accessibility and equal rights that every other person in this city has. Don't misunderstand me. It's not like that I'm going to be trying to mistreat anybody else, but I'm going to definitely be doing some things different than what I've been doing in the last 18 years. Don't want to be antagonistic to anybody or make it difficult for anybody, but when you go into District 1, and we have some of the same substandard houses that's been there for 20 years, and as a board, we cannot come up here with enough votes to really make a difference, then that's a problem for me. It's been a problem for me. But now everybody's going to know it's a problem for me. So with that being said, I'm done.
So first, I want to thank this board. I've had the opportunity to talk to each of you over the last several days, and it's a joy to be able to talk about our common goals, our visions, and working together. And just want to thank this group. I think we're a good team working together, and I know that we can overcome any differences through discussion and dialogue and respect, and look forward to moving forward. I also want to thank the staff in regards to the budget. It's always tough, and especially not knowing where our cash flow situation coming out of the great pandemic of 2020. But Mr. Smith and your team have done a wonderful job, and we appreciate what you've done on behalf of that. I'd also like to thank the community for their feedback during this time. It's amazing whenever we get into situations like that, how many different sides of the story, how people interpret the story, and being able to have dialogue and discussion with folks. And sometimes they don't agree with my position, my decision, but at the end of the day, we shake hands and hopefully have mutual respect for each other. What's that?
We bump elbows.
Bump elbow, okay. Bump elbows. On the issue in regards to the parking lot situation on the old Leon's Barbecue, we've made several businesses pave their lots, and so for us, how do you, so that the reason I voted against the rezoning of that removing of Condition C was because we've required multiple businesses to pave their parking lot, and just trying to treat people equally. The final comment is to think about the life 6 years ago on May 31st was the execution, the killing of Griffin City Police Officer Kevin Jordan. I still remember that phone call that Mr. Smith gave me that early morning, and when he gave us that news of how a senseless killing, and at that time you just think, at that time you're sitting there going, what if Kevin Jordan was a white man? Would he have had that same action from those thugs that took his life? And he was such a kind-hearted person, a man in blue, just like all of our other police officers in the city of Griffin are kind-hearted people that work every day to serve the citizens of this community. And so, again, I'm 100% behind backing our blue, but also understand that we must all look at the culture of society right now and make sure that we police our own, and make sure that we treat each citizen, every citizen, all citizens fairly and equally and justly, and look forward to future discussions with this board. I look forward to our group. I know there are going to be other organizations and groups out there that are going to have discussions, and hopefully we can all work together to be one Griffin. With that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I'll make a motion.
A motion from Mr. Tinsley, second by Ms. Murray. All in favor, please vote.